Love and peace. Today I would like to go over Mexico, the red flag, and the Alamo. First, I'd like to go over some of the ethers that we've already cracked, as far as Montezuma's skull being encased in a box with Moorish tiles. As well, we found in the Ambrose collection where Montezuma's headdress is being displayed, and at first it was labeled as a Moorish headdress. We'll go over both of them shorts first, and then we'll go into this demonstration. It is difficult to reconcile these old stories to archaeological evidence and historical facts. The legends of the Pueblo Indians do not conform to the records of events, but that does not destroy the beauty or interest, and we may accept the skull of Montezuma on the same liberal basis. Miss Prince was present when it was found in the excavation of the garden of an old college near the Mexican capital, enclosed in a sarcophagus of ancient Moorish tile. It was presented to her by Colonel San Martin, a distinguished officer of the Mexican army. This is from 1890. Montezuma's badge, a strange Mexican relic contained in a Vienna museum. Among the many articles of interest in the Natural History Museum at Vienna, perhaps nothing has been more discussed than an old Mexican relic which is preserved with great care under glass. The relic, which is now known as the field badge of King Montezuma, had lain for 300 years in the Ambrose collection, where it was first catalogued as a Moorish hat of long, heavy, glistening green and gold feathers. Again, where it was catalogued as a Moorish hat of long, heavy, glistening green and gold feathers. One investigator held that it was an Indian hat, another an Indian apron, again where it was held at first as a Moorish hat, but in 1820 it was at last known to be a Mexican badge of high rank, and through Ferdinand Hostetter it was proved to be the genuine field decoration of King Montezuma, captured by Cortez in 1520 after the Battle of Atumba. Now it's going to explain how Moorish Montezuma, his wardrobe would be passed down all the way down even to the popes. This battle was followed by the wild fight of the Mexicans and the robbing of the land by Cortez, who sent the standard and wardrobe of the king with much gold to the Emperor Charles V of Spain. The latter gave the standard to Pope Clement. You see what I'm saying? So Moors has always been on top of everything, bro. Who sent it to the Grand Duke Ferdinand of Tyrol for the Embrace collection. It is shaped like a fan and is made from tall feathers of the bird of paradise, which have a glitter like gold over their red, green, and blue colors. The moss had partly destroyed it, but of the 500 original feathers, only 41 were much injured, and those who have been replaced by new ones, and the former beauty is fully restored. Vienna letter. I would like to read an excerpt from this clip. In regards to the Alamo, Santa Anna demanded immediate surrender. Travis returned a defiant refusal, emphasized by a cannon shot. A blood-red flag signifying no quarter immediately was raised above the Mexican camp, and other batteries opened upon the garrison. Meanwhile, Travis had dispatched messengers to Houston and Washington, Texas, 95 miles away, appealing for assistance. Now, there's numerous demonstrations on here about the red flag symbolizing liberation, etc. When I got into this study of the Alamo, I immediately found that all of these Mexicans was demanding that you have to convert to be Catholics and all this. So I want to go ahead and do some readings of my findings of that. And then I found another good reading in regards to the red flags. Colonial memory loss. Mexico inherits Spanish Catholic culture. After independence from Spain, Mexico remained Catholic and retained Spanish colonial military customs. Colonial nations often inherit symbols from the very cultures they try to destroy. They lose the original meanings and turn it into something new, something disconnected from its roots. They fought off Anglo settlers, but used Spanish Crusader laws, Catholic religion, and Roman flags to do it. They condemned outsiders but repeated the same colonizer behavior just under a different name. The Spanish crown, backed by the Pope, waged wars for centuries to expel and erase Muslims from Europe and later the Americas. After 1492, they targeted not only Moors in Spain, but also Moors, indigenous Muslims population in the Caribbean, Mexico, South America, and North America. Their goal was to place Moorish influence with Catholic identity. And I also showed the diagram and map of where it says Old Spain and New Spain, and Spain was in the Americas as well. That's the code word. Spain can mean all over the world, the Moorish Empire. Their goal was to replace Moorish influence with Catholic identity under Rome's guidance. In February of 1836, as the Mexican forces under President Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna surrounded the Alamo in San Antonio, a red flag was raised above the Mexican encampment. When Mexico became independent, it drew settlers. Many of these settlers were Anglo-Saxons, including William B. Travis, but it came with rules. They were to convert to Catholicism, respect the Mexican Constitution, and most critically, not bring slaves into Mexican land, as Mexico outlawed slavery in 1829. But these laws were ignored. William Travis, like many Anglo settlers, came to exploit the land, not to assimilate. He brought beliefs of his own supremacy, even over the government that allowed him in. He was not a native Texan. He was not Mexican. He was a plain truth, a foreigner, violating the laws of the land and building a rebellion on soil that was not his. When Travis raised his cannon and refused Santa Anna's demand for surrender, he claimed he was standing for liberty. But whose liberty? Not the liberty of the indigenous people whose lands were being stolen. Not the liberty of the Mexican citizens who lived under the law of their own independent nation, and certainly not the liberty of the quote-unquote enslaved Africans that men like Travis brought with them from the American South, seeking to preserve slavery even after Mexico had abolished it. Now, this is exactly with what they call the Golden Circle, them trying to extend slave territories and go south. But then with this reading, I immediately think, you're going to have all these people, just like in North America. You're telling me only 2 or 3 of these Europeans was keeping hold of 30 to 40 of these Moors? They got out here far away from their so-called plantation and they're traveling to Mexico and they're out in the middle of nowhere. You don't think that they're just going to murk them and take off? I mean, it comes to mind, you know. But also you can look at the people's conditions today, just like Loke Dog. You know, he was ready to take out anybody, but when the police come around, he'll rub his belly, tap his head, and say rubber baby buggy bumpers. You know what I'm saying? These people will do anything, man, because they're so under mental slavery. The irony here is sharp. Travis called the Mexican government tyrannical, even as he fought to preserve a system of bondage outlawed by the land he lived in. But again, they was Catholics under the popes of Rome. To put it bluntly, Travis wasn't fighting for freedom, he was fighting for power. Over time, the story of the Alamo was rewritten. Travis became a patriot, Crockett became a folk hero, but the facts remain. Mexico owned the land, the Mexican government welcomed settlers under the law, these settlers disobeyed the law, brought slavery, and refused to submit. When the government tried to enforce the law, the settlers claimed oppression. It's the same odd colonial playbook. Come in peace, claim you're being persecuted, and fight for freedom on someone else's soil. The Texas Revolution, including the Alamo, fits this pattern. In the 1400s, the popes issued a series of papal bulls. Those were official letters giving Catholic kingdoms permission to conquer and enslave non-Christians. One of the most infamous was Dum Diversas, and then Romanus Pontifex. These documents declared the Christian kings could invade any land not ruled by Christians, enslave Muslims, and indigenous people, take their land in the name of the Church in Christ. This was called the doctrine of discovery. That doctrine became the legal backbone of European colonialism. So when Spain came to Mexico, they weren't just exploring, they were on a crusade, a religious war, a campaign to wipe out Muslims, Moorish and indigenous presence, and replace it with Catholic dominion. The same way they expelled Moors from Spain in 1492, they turned to the West and said, now we conquer the other Moors, the ones in the New World. The Moors were already here. The red flags were already here. Islamic knowledge, architecture, navigation, and astronomy had already touched these lands. And the Alamo itself originally was a Spanish mission, was a symbol of that Catholic conquest. But we know everywhere these people put their buildings on that land was once sacred. So let's return to 1836. The Mexican army, Catholic and born from Spain's colonial empire, raised the red flag, but this time not in Moorish resistance, but in Catholic force. They had inherited the tools of the old Crusades, and now they were using them against Anglos, invaders who had their own agenda. The red flag here didn't mean evil, it meant you have broken every engagement. There were no mercy, but the irony is deep. The Mexican army, born of the Catholic Crusade, was now fighting the Anglo colonizers born of Protestant empire. Two colonizers clashing over the land that never belonged to either of them. And the original people, indigenous, Moorish, were caught in the middle. So when they say the Alamo was a symbol of liberty, ask liberty for who? Not for indigenous nations, not for Mexican loyals to their laws, not for the enslaved people that Travis and his allies wanted to keep in chains. This wasn't about freedom. This was a war between empires of Crusader war, played out on the land soaked in ancient blood. And when you trace that chain back, you'll find at the top is the Vatican, below the Catholic crowns of Spain and Portugal, then the Mexican Empire, then the Anglo settlers of the U.S., and underneath it all, the bones of the indigenous and Moorish civilizations that once thrived there. So the next time you hear the story of the Alamo, ask yourself, which side were you really on? Because the red flag they feared might be the red flag of your ancestors, of Moors, of Muslims, of resistance, and that flag never died. And that condition still exists today in North America. All you have to do is look at a can of beans. So I was going to close out with the reading that I have about this red flag. Very potent, but it's a long demonstration on top of all this. So I'm just going to leave it in the ethers for someone else to crack. I ask that you go and support Cosmic Droplets, the promotional video I put up, as well as the return of Shiloh. Also, Ali smiles upon an elderly gentleman. I can't believe all the views it has, but it has such small likes, and that's very disrespectful to the prophet. The prophet smiled upon that elder because he saved himself in the nick of time. He said, "You are the man I've been looking for my whole life, man. What's up with you Moors? You are going to get to these gates and they're going to be like, why ain't you support the prophet on this, man? That pale-skinned European, that pale-skinned PK beast was supporting this, man, and put it out, crack the ethers. And y'all ain't supporting, man. Y'all should be ashamed, bro. But I leave all the few in love and peace. Divine honors the Prophet Noble Drew Ali and the Moorish divine and national movement of the world, Islamism, brothers and sisters.
This was not my first space flight. Previous assignments for my newspaper had sent me to the moon many times.
Islam.
But never into the vast reaches of deep space.
Unfold like a petal in the rain. Elevate to a law so plain. As above, so below, feel the pain. Always chasing happiness like water down a drain. Fast lane through the North Gate. Speed of light as I travel trying to keep straight. Milky Way, 7 sisters as I navigate. Big dipper, 7 stars, triple ladies, let it correlate. Ethers cause these powers that be. Elohim, 7 eyes that see. Took an axe to the bloodline tree. In the soil, potent seeds grow free. From his brow cometh majesty. All these sticky dead zombies walk around with a tragedy. Ollie got my spirit charged like a battery. They burn up trying to judge my anatomy. Moore's mad at me, cause I spin 360 like a daiquiri. In a blender with nationality. Why you mad, Moore? Can't stop this UFO topless. All these demonstrations get monotonous. Was the apocalypse cause they godless. But until then, I'ma drop this Cosmic Droplets. Why you mad for? Yo. Scimitar sharp as the blades in Persia. Disengage gravity using inertia. Gyro wheel, this is Shiloh's merger. Divine intervention, get your lowest of murder. Pink elephant in the room, call me a nerda. Hybrid synthesis, full of your girder. I come to return, pale skin, vice versa. Circles have a spinning, it will never desert ya. Sun up in Leo running to and fro. The coming of the wheel from the sky, green glow. Venus in the skyline, then I'll know. The prophet has returned, Sagittarius bow. Portals open up, disappear in thin air. Arrive in light speed, feel I've been there. Beings on squares, outfits like swimwear. Symbols on the chest, pentagrams and gold chairs. Cosmic Droplets. Can't stop this UFO topless. All these demonstrations get monotonous. Was the apocalypse cause they godless. But until then, I'ma drop this Cosmic Droplets.